since enough of you are interested in the concept, I thought, why don't we go ahead and do it a little bit more properly this time? So this will be a little bit more edited than usual, but nothing fancy, because if you know anything about editing, you know that editing takes time. I was actually talking to this, if I can derail for just 1 second, with my niece, who likes to watch certain specific, very edited, very high quality post-production kind of stuff on YouTube. And she said, why don't you do that, Uncle Lore? And I said, well, because I don't have the money to hire another person or team of people who do that for me. Sorry, I'm not that rich. I've been doing this for, God, like 13 years now. I've been doing this since a lot of the popular people were in high school. That's not a joke. But I'm going to do the best I can, and hopefully you'll find it interesting, because I just find this topic fascinating. I find this whole topic fascinating. So, quick reminder of the base idea here. We're going to be discussing when we have the gameplay point, when we have our first boss battle. We might discuss our first dungeon. I don't know. That might be interesting to cover. We'll go ahead and add that on. That's interesting. So, boss fight dungeon. And when we get out of the intro, maybe. That's kind of debatable, because there's some asterisks there. But it's just interesting. It's interesting to see the mindset, the mentality behind the designers as we go. So why don't we just jump right into it? One other thing we're going to be doing to make this a little bit clearer, I'm going to write down the times later, and that way I can just look at the spreadsheet later. Because of course I'm tracking all this stuff in the spreadsheet, and I look forward to sharing that information when we get to it. But for now, why don't we go ahead and just jump into it? Make sure to speed that up. Damn it, I really hate how it actually forces you to go around in a circle. Whoa, I did it again. Same thing I did last time. Don't worry, we're actually going to have real names this time. We're going to do this, the late bloomer here. We're going to do actual names. I know, it's shocking. Hopefully we can go a little bit faster than this. My God. We'll make you Gary. I haven't seen Gary on stream in a while, so we'll put Gary on here. Hopefully he is doing as well as he can. And we'll make this the healer, my beloved sister. Not because she's female, but because she actually prefers healing. Like, seriously, she gets irritated when she has to DPS in a raid. Boom. Okay, so that's 43 seconds, give or take, for the actual start point. So, okay, that tracks with what we did last time. I only shaved off a few seconds. I could probably do that a lot faster, especially if I didn't care about the names, but, you know. Anyway, so we're going to do more or less the same strategy this time. I'm going to go ahead and buy these. In fact, I'm probably going to shut up so you don't have to listen to me talking about all this boring stuff. So I'll give you a second. We'll come back in a minute. I figured it out. I figured out why I said I had 80 gold last time. Because you notice I'm going to have 80 gold this time. We'll go with lightning. Everybody in the chat last time said lightning. We'll go with lightning this time. It's because I forgot to buy the freaking nunchucks for my monk. That was the extra 10 gold I had in the inventory. So I was right! I actually remembered correctly. One thing I did want to talk about over here, and we'll talk about this more when we actually review this game, is the initial part of this game has a really bad money loop. So we're about to fight 4 imps. Okay, that's pretty crap. And this fight is going to go very boring. I'm just going to spoil it. So I've got tons of time to barely even look at the screen. Because these guys are not what I would call particularly lucrative to fight. They will, in fact, give us, if I'm not mistaken, 4 experience. And we need something like 30 in order to level at this point. So early game grinding is really, really slow and really not worthwhile. But it's actually even worse than that, because there's a fairly common thing in RPGs where you want, for like the basic stuff, when you go outside of town to go fight stuff and then go in town to recover at the inn or whatever, like, right? Like, you know the loop, you've done it before. Whenever you're doing that, you want to be gaining more gold or gil or money or whatever from the fight than you're spending on the inn. The inn here costs 30 gold or 40 gold, I forget which. It's 30 or 40. That fight gave us 24. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but if you don't know what you're doing and you have certain requirements or certain setups with your classes, especially since not all jobs are equal in FF1, that can actually have you fall behind, especially if someone dies. If someone dying also takes about 40 gold in order to resurrect them, and you may literally not even have that kind of money in order to resurrect them, which can mean you're basically soft-locked and have to start over. And that's not a great feeling. Now, it's not the end of the world. It's not something that's like, oh, this is the worst RPG ever played. Not FF2. But no, it's something that does deserve to be notated. And it makes sense. After all, these people had no idea what they were doing when it came to designing this game. After all, RPGs were relatively new at the time. They were only, well, like 10 years old, something like that, when FF1 came out. I'm being slightly facetious. 2 encounters again, by the way. Same amount of encounters. So that's actually much faster this time because I actually remembered to buy the damn thing. So, first boss fight at 423. Not too shabby. This will be a cakewalk because we're just going to run over him. I don't even need to heal on this one. I'm just going to smash him in the face. I'll catch up with you when we defeat him. And he's gone. It really is shocking how much the difference equipping a weapon on your monk is. And yeah, so if you do very, very few or almost no encounters, you are pretty much guaranteed to level up as soon as you hit Garland. That's very much by design. It is actually funny to... Get out of the way. 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 It's very funny to me how much of this game is designed and isn't designed at the same time. You can really feel just how much they were throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that stuff would stick. But anyways... To wrap up my thoughts on FF1 very, very briefly, once again, we see the same general concepts that I was just talking about last time. Very, 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 very gameplay focused. We have had a grand total of 3 text boxes that are mandatory. 3 text boxes that we can't avoid. Garland, Princess Sarah, and the King. And then we get right into a random encounter, which, of course, I knew that was going to happen. Naturally, I was pretty cognizant, aware of that. But 3 text boxes, very, very, very little story. If we count the intro thing, it just gives us the basic premise, and that's it. It's all about getting right into that gameplay immediately, which makes sense, especially since the dominant amount of time being taken up here is just doing some random encounters in a boss fight. There's not even really a dungeon to speak of. We haven't actually hit the first dungeon yet. Which, yes, that means we have to keep going for a little bit. I mean, why not, right? You know, while we're here, I could parse these out. I could do, like, FF1, and then if I run out of time, I can do FF2 later. But anyways... There, 625. This time, a little bit faster than last time. That's the end of the intro. But you notice we have not hit the first dungeon yet. Character design by Amano. Why did he get this? I'd love to learn that someday. I know a great deal about this series, and I have studied it up and down and left and right for years and years and years. I don't know how Amano got character designer, because what you may think of as artwork is up to you, and that's your judgment call and not mine. But why character designer? The thing that he seems to be the worst at of all the things that he can do. Like big sweeping vistas, sure. You know, fanciful, like magical, weird, crazy stuff, sure. People? Eh. And I know how Japanese... Oh my god, Gary's dead. Oh no, he didn't die, he didn't die. I know how Japanese work culture works. I know that once someone's in, they're pretty much in for life. They're never going to fire him. So that's understandable. Please don't kill my Oh my god, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. We might not make it to the first dungeon. But I found myself wondering how that got started. If anybody knows, feel free to jump in the comments and be like, well, you see, Laura, I don't know why I sound like a Ferengi, but it's true that in fact... Oh, I'm out of lit. Okay. You know what? Can I share really quick my favorite little anecdote about this game? Back when I was reading strategy guides, you know, the old ones you used to buy, the really cheap, thin ones that were made by some third-party company that had half its information wrong. One of the most common guide techniques I would hear for this game in particular is, as soon as you get to like a certain dungeon, and it's like the 3rd dungeon in the game, have 99 potions on you. That's just standard operating procedure. Anyways, I'll catch back up with you when we get to the second boss, which is still not until we get to the first dungeon. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt really quick. You have nothing! I do want to comment on one thing really quick as we're going here. I'm making about 15 experience per kill. I need about 150 to level, which is about 10 fights per level, which sounds about right for a lot of RPGs, except when you factor in the fact that these fights are absolutely kicking my ass. I am on the verge of death constantly and barely surviving some of these fights, and it still takes me 10 to level. Experience curves. 80 gold, by the way, to resurrect someone. You get 15 gold per encounter. Think about that for a second. That's what I was talking about earlier. Interesting, we get our second level up, so our level up to level 3 from, you know, the second boss. Yeah, by the way, 2 bosses now. Still haven't gotten to the first dungeon. That'll take a minute. Crossing that lake, I always forget how mean that is. In fact, actually, we need to heal. Holy crap. Yes, 100... Okay, I don't want to cross the lake again. I don't even think we can afford any upgrades. Yeah, we can't afford any of that. Okay, so moving on. Moving on. Okay. It's not like I've been skipping encounters. There's ways to bug out the run thing in this game. I don't remember how to do it off the top of my head. So we're just gonna we're gonna grab that save, because we totally saved at the end, and then we're gonna pray. There it is. And time. 32:49. We have finally hit the first dungeon. Oh man, I should probably mention, just for the sake of amusement factor, we actually burned through like all of our potions and all of our heals and all of our spells just getting to the first dungeon, as in going from Elfheim to here. So that's cool. So that's FF1. Interesting structure. They pushed the first real dungeon really far out, and it's worth noting, this game actually has very few real dungeons, relatively speaking. In fact, we could probably count them. There's this one, Earth Cave, and then the other Earth Cave I can't think of the name of off the top of my head. The Volcano, the Ice Cave, the Waterfall, the Underwater, the Tower, the Sky Castle, if we're counting that as separate from the Tower, which is debatable, and the final dungeon. That's 10. Oh, and the optional dungeon where you get the rat tail. That's 11. So it's 11 dungeons in the game. That's not a lot. But it makes sense. Again, this is not a very large game, and it was kind of smooth. And almost every single one of these dungeons is large. Like, really large. And a hell of a thing. My personal approach to this is usually to hit this dungeon, or rather get to this dungeon, and then walk back to town to recover, and then keep doing that until I'm a little bit higher level. But I'm getting way off topic. Structure. Here we've got... let's change the music. Let's do that. Almost immediately get straight to this core gameplay. We still have had very few mandatory cutscenes or dialogues on the way. We had to talk to Bike, the pirate, and Sarah, and Garland, and the King, and that's it. That's the full list of people we've had to talk to at this point in time. We also have only done the one dungeon, because they pushed the dungeon way out. Again, Marsh Cave. First boss was right off the bat, and so that just leaves you about 32.5 minutes of nothing but gameplay, which is almost always overworld crawling and fighting enemies. And all of this makes sense, given what they were going for the times and efforts. But what about 2? Final Fantasy 2. This one's for you, Blue Wind. I know you're not even going to watch this video because you hate me and you hate my face. And you especially hate the robot war. But let's do this. Let's do up to the first boss, which is going to be the last thing we do here. So we're going to be in a far-off land. We get some support. The Paramikian Empire. So let's push up the game speed. There we go. And go. One of the things I always have liked about FF2 is the way that it starts off with a fight against some Dark Knights who are killing you as you're fleeing the town. I don't tell you any of that. But it also began the series' love affair within Medias Res, which is something they do constantly. I mean, think about all the story-focused Final Fantasies. How many of them start just in the middle of the action? I'll give you a hint. It's almost all of them. So this is what I was talking about earlier. Final Fantasy II, we're going to get there in just a couple of minutes, just like I showed last time. But Final Fantasy II is very heavily focused on story. This is also a perfect example, kind of like the Pokemon example I gave last time, of why I say that core gameplay is a little bit different than gameplay. We have access to gameplay now. We had a combat sequence already. But we don't have access to leveling or equipment or the towns or anything, really. And at the moment, we don't have access to anything. I'm hands-off other than mashing A. So they're like, oh, please go up there. So I want to learn Wild Rose. Yes, and I want to say Wild Rose. Okay, and now we go talk to him. Say Wild Rose. All right, and arguably we're done here. I'm going to go ahead and say that we're done there. So that's 142. I'm going to disagree with my past self, which I do all the time. Past self sucks. I need to delete all the old ruminations. So we're going to go ahead and spend some of our equipment, we do actually start this time. They fixed that a little bit. So we do actually start with a couple of things this time, which is important because we need to immediately get rid of all this stuff and start raising unarmed. What's really funny to me about this game is this is a use it to level it system, which Virtually every version of this game has a slight variation and the exact specifics of how it programs gaining your stats at the end of a level, or gaining your stats at the end of combat, which I just find interesting. So let's get rid of all this crap. Unarmed is best armed. We probably want some armor, though. We could get some spells, but honestly, spells suck unless they're, let's see, Toad, I believe, is one of the really good early spells. Whoop, whoop, whoop. There's actually a lot of instant death spells in FF2. They all do the same thing. They just instantly kill you. That's all it is. I don't know what I have equipped right now. Do I have armor on? Hang on. Do we have armor? I have buckler, leather, so I do not have head or arms. Probably on any of them. Hang on. Let's actually double check everyone. Hang on. She has nothing on. I mean, that makes sense. Have you seen her sprite? And by her sprite, I mean her artwork. Wait, what? Oh yeah, we need to... we need to unequip this. There we go. Let's buy helmets for everybody. I am glad, unironically, that they fixed a few of the issues from FF1. Like the fact that we actually starts with some freaking, you know, gold and gear, and we don't fall behind the in curve. I need to come up with a term for that. It's the thing I was talking about last time. I mean, hell, even when I was running around Elfheim, it's 100 gold to stay at the end, and each combat gives you, like, maybe 50 or so? Unless you hit the ocean, in which case it gives you, like, 240, but those battles will beat the crap out of you. While I'm here, how many of you, either yourself personally or you know someone who headed west and ended up fighting the Mazidian monsters when you first played this game? Hell, I had that happen when I first played the PlayStation 1 version, too. Whoops. Speaking of those kind of stories, how many of you saw these NPCs wandering around town and was like, oh, I should go talk to them? And then did. And, you know, died. You know, I know it's not much, but this again kind of showcases how FF2 is much more focused on story than FF1. I mean, even this little tidbit. Yeah, then let me in, you jackass. This is predominantly story. We're not actually doing a dungeon. You know, we're not at our first dungeon yet. This is arguably not even our first town, or second town. It's our third town. This is all story. Ooh, and loot. Oh, I'll take loot. Oh, I need those potions so badly. By the way, I get an average of about 9 gold per, you know, fight. Keep that in mind for a minute from now. You know, another thing that occurs to me about this game. No offense to people who like this game. But I imagine this game would be really awful to play if you didn't know what you were doing. If you don't have a walkthrough or you haven't played it before. There is some guidance, but it's very vague, and the game allows you to go pretty much everywhere at multiple points and completely screw yourself over. And I know some people argue that that's a good thing, and that's certainly a debatable topic to be debated. But, yeah. Okay, it's only 2 gold a night at the end. So that's good. That's actually exactly what that should be. If I'm remembering correctly, it charges you based on how low you are, though. I could be misremembering that. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. Still, you know, I was doing badly. I got injured. Hit the end. 2 gold. No problem. I wonder how much potions are. I should look that up. When we get to the next time, we'll see how much potions are. I missed my calling. It's so nice being able to edit out all these random encounters. Just, you know. And we're in the next town. Boom, just like that. Isn't that nice? Let's see, where's the item shop? There it is. You can tell because it has a oil lantern thing. Yeah, I want a crucifix. 50. So that's not as good. Roughly 5 battles to get 1 potion. We'll hold on to that for now, because we want gear. You know what I find funny? Obviously, they're a little hurt up for help in the Wild Rose Rebellion, but, like, they send these kids, by their own terminology and definition, out to invade the local occupied castle city in order to get word and then come back as proof that they're worthy of joining the rebellion. That's, it's a thing. I have heard some people argue that this is actually the starting point, the gameplay point of the game, is when you get Minwu. Not sure I agree with that. To me, it makes a lot more sense that it's as soon as you have access to the game proper. I mean, the companion characters don't really change the dynamic how the game plays in any substantial way. They just provide an interesting little anecdote of gameplay, which arguably sucks. Oh, hang on. Watch this. And we're there. Check it out. God, the miracle of editing is so great. I'm actually really curious. Like, it's like a race. Speaking of which, 2920, we hit our first dungeon. Haven't had our first boss yet. So, I'm actually really curious if we're going to manage to beat FF1's overall timer. Because, you know, I don't remember the numbers, and I don't have them right here in front of me. Having said that, you know, one thing I do find interesting is FF1 certainly has a couple of towns, but FF2, we've already encountered 6 as of this point in the story. Now, that makes sense. Most of the towns are very, very small and don't really contain much. And, you know, spoilers for later in the game. But it's interesting to contrast the two, again, alongside each other. Given this game is so much more story-focused, since, let's be honest, it's basically a saga game, that tracks. You know, the worst part is I do not remember my way through here. And I've actually been through here recently on the Pixel Remaster. Oh my god! Pixel Remaster version. Run. It is kind of funny to me. The whole reason the early part of the game works at all is because Minwu here is a healing battery. Good thing you won't be leaving the party anytime soon, right? In case you're wondering why I'm back in town, Minwu just had to carry 3 corpses back here in order to recover, and rest, and now it's going to cost me 126 gold to stay the night. So, that's cool. We're going to go ahead and make an attempt at round 2 now. I mean, I have to comment on the troll rooms, right? The goddamn troll rooms. Just... which one do you think it is? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Fun little fact of game design. If you're given 4 options in game design, it's almost always option 2 or 3 because of a weird quirk of how psychology works. In this case, it's actually 1, but only because I... Okay. Of course I get a random encounter. And I'm ambushed! Oh my god, I might actually die to this! I was just gonna show you the troll room. You know what, let's just run. Just run. Just run. Use cure. And then run. Just run. Please. Okay, yes, curing is good. Yes, I accept the cure. Now, please run. Please run. Please. God, I hate this game so much. I hate this game so much. I'm not even at the boss yet. I'm not even at the boss. Come on, please run. Please run. Yep. You're beating the crap out of... okay. It's the first door. There. I showed it. It's done. It's canonized. It's okay. They wouldn't possibly do more than, you know, 1 bundle of troll room. We did it. We did it. 1 hour. 1 hour 58 seconds. Oh my god, I hate myself. Oh, we did it. We got to the final point. We have successfully reached the boss. Oh god, I completely spaced in the mind-numbingness of how awful this game is. To mention that we actually already left the intro. We leave the intro as soon as we get Minwu in the party. So, to talk about FF2, if I could try and gauge my brain back into functionality for just a second here. Oh my god. We start off very, very, very story heavy, and then we're let off the hook, right? We can go and play the game. Very little direction, but that's okay. We know where we're going. We go north. We do the little test thing, come back. Very story focused, even though that is predominantly gameplay. And then we talk to Minwu, and he's like, "Hey, we need to go and get the mithril," and the mithril's been shut off, and that's been the big thing. So we have our quest, we have our hook, we have our goal, and we go, and then there's like a town, which leads us to a town, which leads us to a town, which leads us to the first dungeon. And so, story, dungeon, and then at the very end of this hellish nightmare-scape of a dungeon, we finally find our first boss, and this is interesting to me, because it really does emphasize how FF2 has more of a story focus, even though that story isn't... there's not a lot of depth to it. there's not a lot of, to talk about. There's not a lot there, but it is clearly focusing more on that axis, probably as a bit of an experiment. This actually makes me wonder, because I don't remember off the top of my head if the Saga games have this level of story focus. I know, like, for example, Final Fantasy Legends 1 and 2 do not, but I don't remember FFL3, and I don't remember the Romancings as well as I would like to. And then there's the Octopaths. We don't talk about them. Anyways, that was FF2. Surely FF3 won't be as bad, right? No, see, I'm kind of psyching you up a little bit. I know FF3 is not going to be that bad, because, again, and I talked about this last time, FF3 is FF1 too. It is a more or less direct sequel to FF1, kind of completely stepping over FF2, which is honestly a Saga game more than it is a Final Fantasy game anyways. So, we're going to go ahead and crank the message speed, hit this, and go. Interesting tidbit. In FF3, this very first encounter here is actually completely scripted. I have no control yet. It just shoves me into the encounter. Now, that by itself is not that interesting. But what is interesting is I can just actually hold down button for the first time, because FF1 and 2 don't have the rollover targeting, which is a concept so old, I have trouble explaining it to people who don't understand what it is. The idea is like this. Let's say you have 2 targets, and you have everyone target the one target, and the first person kills that target. Well, what happens? Well, you're supposed to roll over to the second target, right? Because that's normal. No, in FF1 and 2, you just target the empty space and nothing happens. Cool. Anyway, so, gameplay. Woo! But again, not full gameplay yet. This also brings up another interesting tidbit, though. This is something I wanted to talk about, and I would love your guys' feedback on this, if you don't mind. Obviously, a lot of this is debatable because of how morphic and unstructured a lot of these games can be, at least as far as standardization. So, one of the things you'll say is, well, isn't this the first dungeon in FF3? And you could certainly argue that, but I feel like it isn't. I feel like it doesn't quite qualify for first dungeon status, because this is just the tutorial and doesn't really function any other way. And the first real dungeon is after this. But then, does that qualify for the boss as well? And this is something that's debatable. This is something that could be chewed on. Because, for example, let me use a direct example. This would change whether the first reactor, Reactor 1, I think? God, I actually remember. The first reactor in FF7 is the first dungeon, and the Scorpion thing is the first boss. Or if Reactor 5 is the first dungeon, and the other robotic boss, I can't think of the name of it right now. Look, it's late. It's been a long day. Is the first boss. Because that's debatable, right? Does that count? For example, there is a boss that we're going to be fighting in a bit here, and I counted it as the first boss last time. And I think it does qualify, but then if we're counting the first boss fight as the first boss fight, then does that not mean the first dungeon counts as the first dungeon? And you're probably thinking, who gives a crap, Lauren? Well, it does kind of change a few things about how the games are structured. I don't know, what do y'all think? What do y'all think? I'll hesitate. I'll put a question mark by the first dungeon mark. I'll listen to some feedback on this one. See, one of the downsides of not doing this live is when I'm doing this live, I could say, hey, what do you all think? And you all can give me your reactions immediately. Especially those of you on the VOD watchers, which, as a reminder, the Lore Walker VOD watchers are awesome. While we're here, I'll talk about this when we get to actually reviewing this game, but this dungeon is actually really well structured. Keep using that word. I'm sorry, I apologize. It's very well designed. You have a bunch of encounters, which are, you're supposed to run over them, even with the very little equipment and levels that you have. They are designed to get you a couple of levels, which will enable you to be ready for the upcoming boss fight. And there's a healing well, so you can completely refresh, relatively before you go into the final boss fight. And if you get all the loot, there's some potions. Much more importantly, there are oh my god, there's 2 yawns. I could edit that out. While we're here, let's talk about the level design, dungeon design of this dungeon. There's, all the enemies here are designed to be not something that you completely run over, but nevertheless push the party a little bit. But you're not really going to be struggling against them, especially since you can roll over. They also give a decent amount of experience. We're already level 3, way before we were that over in FF1 or 2. Well, I know 2 doesn't have levels, but equivalent. Here's our first boss. 430 on that one. Also, if we bothered to loot the whole dungeon, which of course I did, that gives us 2 of these south winds. And this boss is weak to those. And as you've probably seen before, in fact, I think the previous video I put together did the exact same thing. God, he hits for half our health, too. 1 south wind. 2 south winds. And he's alive? Oh, wow, I must have rolled really low. I've never seen him survive 2 south winds before. Jeez. Okay, well, I look like an idiot now. There you go. There you go. Thank you. I've actually died to that boss, in the DS version specifically. But the DS version, well, it has its own issues. So this is the big plot point. Yay. And one of the biggest cutscenes in the game, too. And that's it. That's the end of the first dungeon. And we have also reached the gameplay point. So that's pretty fast. As I'm sitting here, I'm realizing how tired I am because that's one of the dumbest comments. That was pretty fast. Jesus Christ, Lord. I'm sorry. No, the point I'm trying to get across is that it is fascinating. Again, this is very much modeled after FF1. In fact, if not for the fact that we started in the first dungeon, it's very much modeled after that. Let's go ahead and become a fighter. My lineup might look a little bit familiar here. You're probably fairly wondering, why even keep going at this point? Well, depending on exactly how you all decide to vary this up, we could argue that there's another point at which we have our first boss in our first dungeon. And I kind of want to cut this off here. I want to do the 1 through 3 thing like I did with the previous video. And I want you to give me feedback on that, because it's something I'm really torn on. It feels weird, but again, it does change things. For example, that would mean Narsh, at the very least the Narsh Cave, when you're playing as Terra, is the first dungeon in FF6, and the first boss would be Welk. And you could see how much that kind of changes things, right? Because that's really, really early in the game. If that does not qualify, if that's not good enough, for lack of a better way to put it, to qualify, then what that means is the first dungeon would be the South Figaro Cave, and the first boss would actually be Ultros, both of which are much further into the game. So we're going to assume the second rules, and we can write down times later. Real talk, when I was capturing footage for the Pixel Remaster thing for the video that probably hasn't even gone live yet at this point, I got so stuck here trying to figure out where to find Sid. Something about that amuses me. I don't really have anything else to add to that. I'm apparently a moron. Like, I went all the way to the castle, talked to the king. King was like, hey, help. And I was like, yeah, sure. I need to get to the cave, though. I'll just go across the cave. Well, yeah, how do I get across the cave? We'll just go across the cave. Oh, how do I go across the cave? Yeah, the airship's right here. It's right here. Hey, Freedom Point. I'm joking. This isn't a Freedom Point. Oh, this always did amuse the hell out of me. So, 12 minutes, definitively the first dungeon, no matter how we qualify that. See how long it takes me to get to the first boss. May or may not have to go back to town because, well, we've got a couple of dead people. Don't look at me, okay? They were that way when I found them. Okay, so that was hell. I have this weird feeling that the game actually wanted me to, you know, constantly change my party. But, like, changing your party not only reduces the levels you're getting that, but you have to pay. It costs a resource to switch things, so... Also, like, I don't even have a really good litany of spells yet. Like, there's tons of undead here, so surely I have something like Dia, right? Like, that was a thing in FF1 and 2. No. No, I have Cure and Get Rid of Poison. That's it. Like, I just... Anyways, this isn't a review, of course. This is just an analysis on structure. But it is interesting that after doing so many things right, we're just getting... Oh my god, look at this! Look at this! This is what my life has been. The two frontliners are extremely dead, because these things take 700,000 damage to die. So we've just been running, because at this point, just whatever. We're cheating the number. We're just going to get to the first boss fight, and get a definitive answer for what the first boss fight is. Hopefully this is something approaching... Oh my god, that was half my health. That's just... What is this game? But if you're wondering, I do have armor on them. I've gotten a fairly large amount of gil in this dungeon. So I've got armor, I'm fully equipped, you know, my mains had good weapons. Like, I'm just getting pasted. Can I run, please? He's asleep. He's asleep. He's asleep. Now he's at 10 health. Well, let's see, now he's dead. Okay. This is so stupid. Okay, we're gonna heal with like one of our last heals. This is it. This is it. I just need to go like, God, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, that was it. That was 6 steps. This is it. This is it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna reach the boss fight. And time. Oh my God. Oh my God. We made it. We made it. Okay, so moving on. That was FF3. This is a weird one. And again, we have to establish precedent. We have to decide here, which is why I'm gonna not tell you the times yet, because I haven't written down the times yet, because we haven't decided the times yet. We need to decide, like, what qualifies. Is the no really first boss? I'm saying that wrong. Is the first boss the first boss? Is the first dungeon the first dungeon? Or is it only the first real boss and the first real dungeon that qualifies? Because as you can see, that's a bit of a gap. I don't know what the actual timer is. In fact, I think I actually did write it down. Hang on. Did I write it down? I probably didn't. I didn't because I'm stupid. But the point is, I'm sure that's a bit of a gap from, you know, like 30 seconds when the game first loses your control on the goblin fight at the very, very beginning to this nonsense, and when you fight the turtle versus getting to that frickin' Djinn. So what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But regardless of that, let's talk about the structure of the game, because FF3 definitely is much more gameplay focused than 2 was. Not quite to the extent of 1. There is some story here. Obviously, we skipped the overwhelming majority of it, but there's events, there's scenarios, there's activities happening. In FF1, you're mostly just going between town to dungeon to town to dungeon, with overworld sections in between. The dungeon crawling is actually the primary point of FF1, and that's fine. That's what it was going for. Dungeons and Dragons. Here in FF3, we are actually trying to accomplish goals, which certainly has dominant gameplay, just like FF1, but also has shades of story to it. Makes sense, right? And I can see why a lot of people say FF3 is the first Final Fantasy game, although, if I'm being completely honest, I disagree, because I know which one I think is the first Final Fantasy game.